Farben began in 1933 in complete violation of the Versailles Treaty to stockpile for the Nazis critical war materiel from all over the world. More important, probably, was the brilliance of the I.G. Farben engineers in translating the thousands of patents they had acquired all over, and particularly from Standard Oil of New Jersey, into machinery. The machinery necessary to make final products. After all, Hitler could not have built his powerful military machine on coal, which was Germany's only resource, natural resource. Farben took the coal, combined it with water and air, and made not only synthetic gasoline and synthetic rubber, but synthetic fabrics for parachutes, buoys for the Navy, nitrates for explosives. It was estimated that between 1933, Hitler's rise to power, and 1944, Farben manufactured 85 to 90% of the explosives produced in Germany and 90% of its gunpowder, and airplane and truck tires and tank treads, and all of its poison gas, including taboon, sarin, which was used in the Japanese subway killing, and Cyclone B, which was used at Auschwitz to kill thousands in a frenzied attempt at the last minute at the, quote, final solution. The Farben defendants knew every detail of the Wehrmacht's intricate engine of warfare and watched its growth with an architect's pride. To quote Taylor again, they knew that the engine was going to be used, and they planned to use it themselves. Europe was dotted with mines and factories which they coveted, and for each step in the march of conquest, there was a program of industrial plunder which was put into prompt and ruthless execution. These are men who made the war possible, and they did it because they wanted to conquer. As the Wehrmacht marched into country after country, I.G. Farben marched alongside to grab the chemical and allied industries of that country, for which long in advance they had prepared blueprints. They called these blueprints, and I'm quoting, the New Order, Neue Ordnung. They installed their commissars and managers in plants which were prosperous. They dismantled those that were marginal and shipped them back to Germany. These factories and mines which they took over included Skoda Wetzlar Werke in Austria, the Ausiger Verein in Czechoslovakia, in Norway its hydroelectric installation, in France, Rome Poulon, now an affiliate of Hearst, which shares the patent with Hearst. RH, I forget the number, it's the abortion pill. Again with the quotation. The crimes with which these men are charged were not committed in rage or under the stress of sudden temptation. They were not the slips or lapses of otherwise well-ordered men. One doesn't build a stupendous war machine in a fit of passion, nor an Auschwitz factory during a passing spasm of brutality. What these men did was done with the utmost deliberation. There will be no mistaking the ruthless purposefulness with which they embarked upon their course of conduct. And that purpose was to turn the German nation into a military machine and build it into an engine of destruction so terrifyingly formidable that Germany could, by brutal threats, and if necessary by war, impose her will and her dominion on Europe, and later on other nations beyond the seas. In this arrogant and supremely criminal adventure, the defendants were eager and leading participants. On this charge, the charges of spoliation and plunder, the few defendants who were convicted received very light sentences. On the charge of crimes against peace, that is, conspiring with Hitler in preparing for and waging aggressive war, all of the 21 defendants were acquitted. I can, if I wanted to be fair, rationalize this decision on crimes against peace. They say that there's nothing a lawyer cannot rationalize, but I would say that conspiracy, and they were charged with conspiring in the preparation for and waging of the war, which in fact they did do. But at that time, conspiracy, even in domestic law, was a fairly novel concept 50 years ago. What I absolutely cannot rationalize are the verdicts and the sentences meted out to the defendants charged with slave labor. Slave labor had been a war crime since the 1898 Geneva Convention, and I can't rationalize their being acquitted of crimes against humanity, mainly the murder of the Jews and atrocities such as medical and poison gas experiments. As many of you know, I'd like to talk about slave labor a little bit. How am I doing on time, Eli? As many of you know, I.G. Farben built its synthetic rubber plant, its Ford, at Auschwitz because of the availability of very cheap and abundant labor. Once under Farben's dominion, these inmates were starved, tortured, and in many cases beaten to death. It's estimated that 25,000 inmates died in the construction of the plant alone. The SS, who brought the inmates there every morning, drove them over from Auschwitz proper, were paid by I.G. Farben $1 a day for an able man, 75 cents for an able-bodied woman, and lesser amounts if they were weak types, and 50 cents for a child. The prosecution produced thousands of these SS receipts in Farben's files as proof of the number of inmates that worked and died there. On this count, the longest sentence given out was 7 years. All of the defendants were given credit for time served, which was proper, but those who were convicted of 1.5 to 2 years were immediately discharged. And then John McCloy, as soon as he got to Germany as High Commissioner, set up a clemency commission, which in 1950 commuted the sentences of all of the defendants in all of the cases in Nuremberg, with the exception of the Einsatzgruppe.